Hey everybody, today we're talking post-World War II as well as the 1950s. You'll cover all of the 1950s stuff in the next video. This one is really just going to be what was going on post-World War II in the United States. Asked you guys to read over this information, see if you had any questions. Haven't received any, so I'm just going to pick out a handful of things, talk about a few of those, and basically try to narrow all of the post-war information down into one sheet. Okay, so first thing here, return to a peacetime economy. Just like we had talked about after World War One, there was a big push to, hey, we have to get back to normal. We have to get back to being the United States. Same thing is going on here. Gonna do it a little bit differently this time. Consumer production is going to go way up. You had a lot of factories that had been, put into use much more than they previously had been, and now they're going to continue those things, realizing that hey, because of World War II, because of so many people employed, we as a country have more money to spend, which means we can buy more things. So consumer production is really going to get ramped up. The GI Bill is created. A lot of college aged people wound up joining the military because of World War II. And the country decided, hey, why not reward those people for their sacrifice by creating the GI Bill and paying for some of their higher education? Just like once World War One was over, people said, okay, the war's over. Now we're getting back to normal. Before I had made sacrifices with regards to working conditions and pay, now we can get into strikes. Exactly the same thing is going to happen post World War II. Truman's program. He gets reelected in 1948. There was a little bit of controversy when that happened, but he is reelected in 1948. He is going to make some extensions to the New Deal. With what he was going to call the Fair Deal. He was going to extend some of the things that were already in there, extend, make big changes, big contributions to, seeing a minimum wage in the United States. So if you work in a job today that pays you minimum wage, you have President Truman to thank for that existing. And then, upping Social Security, making sure that that was going to stick around. Next president's going to be Eisenhower, President Eisenhower. You may remember him from World War II as General Eisenhower. Like so many before him, he's going to take his military success and turn that into political success. He was the military general who basically won World War II for the United States. He's going to be a natural Republican candidate the next time there's going to be an election. So he is going to bring about what he calls dynamic conservatism. After a while of being under Democrats' control, now you're going to see a spread of years where you're going to have Republican control. But he brings in what they call dynamic conservatism, not the penny pinching ways of before, not the big business ways before, but something that's a little bit more social, a little bit more relatable to the average person. He's going to repeal some New Deal programs and things that he thinks that, man, we're just spending way too much money on this or that. Expands others. He's going to build the interstate highway system, which we'll talk more about in the next video. But he is going to keep Social Security around. He's even going to extend it, which surprised a lot of people because it wasn't the Republican, so to speak, thing to do at that time. American abundance. Like we said a couple of times, you're going to see that more and more people are working because of World War II. Employment was way up, and production is going to skyrocket. And because of that, more availability of things and more people being employed and more people having money, you're going to see increasing salaries, more people buying cars. Those highways are going to make it so that people can travel a little bit further, and you're going to see the suburbs grow specifically because of this, because you have more people that have cars and can now work, let's say in, or they can live in Greenwood and work in downtown Indianapolis. That is a direct result of more people having cars and having highways that makes it easy to get to those places. So a lot of these suburbs are going to grow up specifically because of that. This is also what we call the baby boom generation. You had a lot of soldiers came back from war, and 9 months later, you saw a big surge in the population. So that baby boom generation that is probably your grandparents. That's what we mean by the baby boom generation. Big surge in the population after World War II, and then increases in middle management positions. You see that primarily because man, you had a lot of people that were coming back from war that had been, sergeants and lieutenants, and had a taste of some leadership. When they came back, a lot of factory owners, for example, recognized that, hey, you know what? This person is a good leader. We need to create a position where they can use that leadership skill. So a lot of your middle management positions, this is where they started out and why they exist. Okay, scientific advances. You see, a lot of research is going to come out of World War II. There's a lot of invention that happens during wartime. A lot of things that we have today we can attribute to, hey, there was a war that was going on, it was developed for that, and then afterwards it gets developed into something else that is more for the average person. A lot of electronics, advances in computers, advances in aviation are all going to be because of World War II. We have GPS, for example, because it was originally developed for the military. They didn't spend billions and billions and billions of dollars to put satellites into outer space so that you could find directions. They did it so that the military could use it to know more about what was going on with their efforts. We're going to have a polio vaccine. We don't have polio today because of this vaccine that's going to be invented by a guy by the name of Jonas Salk. I'm going to talk more about that in the other video. A lot of cancer research begins in the 1950s in the post World War II era. Once again, you had a whole bunch of scientists, for example, that did a lot of work on the Manhattan Project that they needed work. Polio vaccine, cancer research, that's where a lot of those people are going to wind up going. And then finally, new mass media music and poetry. TV and movies are going to become a big deal after World War II is over. You're going to see many, many, many more people who are going to be able to afford things like TVs. So, a lot of TV shows are going to, iconic TV shows are going to get their start in the 1950s. And it's because of that extra money that's available. Radio is still there, but it's going to make a change from radio programs, like television type programs on the radio, to, hey, we're going to play music and it's going to be rock and roll. Rock and roll is going to take America by storm starting in the 1950s, and that's going to lead to a big, big push for new musicians, but also record labels of all ethnicities. Motown Records, for example, was created in Detroit, and it was specifically going to cater to African American artists. So you're going to see a lot of that as well. We're not talking um, racial equality in the 1950s. Absolutely not going to get to that. But we're going to make strides. We're going to take steps forward. And that's what we want to kind of focus on there. So that's kind of your post war, what was going on in the country. We'll talk specifically about the 1950s in the next video.